This morning I'm giving a demonstration on how we're going to do the gilding that we're going to be doing later this week on the piece that you're working on. So what we're doing is the ancient gilding technique using gesso, and we just made the gesso earlier, and this is what the gesso looks like when it's dried. I did this in a letter I, and I did one of these for each one of you. And I did it as an I because when we gild, you're going to be using your burnisher to have to go into little corners and seal the gold against the gesso. So that's why I do the letter I. Some of you have been asking about how many layers. These I's have 4 layers of gesso on them. And as you can see, it just has a nice rounded surface to it. And this is going to allow the gold to have a nice sparkle and to capture the light. So the worksheets that I had you guys get show the setup of the gilder and the equipment. What you're going to do is you're going to have your artwork in front of you right here. To the side you have the gilder's cushion and the gilder's knife. I got these at Paper and Ink. You can order these. They're like a suede. They come in different styles depending on where you get them. I like this one because it's flat. Some of them have more of a dome to them. But we're going to lay the gold onto this. And then this is the gilder's knife. It's 2-sided. And this is what we're going to use to cut the gold into rectangular pieces that we're going to lay onto the eye. Then over here, we've got the burnisher that I briefly showed you the other day. This is the hematite burnisher that has the lipstick-shaped hematite. And then we have a gold brush, and this is used for brushing away the loose gold from around the edges. And then I also have glassine paper right here, and this is what we're going to be burnishing through. Now sometimes at home I'll burnish directly onto the gold with the hematite, but I find in the workshops that it works much better using the glassine paper. So to get started, oh, I forgot the silk. We have silk because this is what we're going to use to press the gold down onto the gesso. So what I'm going to do is the first thing is show you how to lay the gold onto the gilder's cushion. And I get my gold from Wayrung and Billmeyer. They're in Chicago. They actually are now making it up in Wisconsin, I think probably because of tax purposes. But they're the last of the gold beaters that still beat the gold by hand. And they make really good gold, and they give you a good price, and they're great to work with. If you tell them you take my workshop, they're going to know what to give you. So loose gold comes in a book like this. It's 25 sheets, and it's separated by these thin sheets of paper here. And what you want to do is hold it like sort of like a clothespin at the top, and that's going to keep the gold from just dropping out. And then you can flip this back with your thumb and then lift this. And again, there's no rush working with this. So now you've got the gold like this. What you do is you just let it roll down onto the cushion and just lightly press. You don't want to be, pressing it hard. And then you just lift it up like that. And then there's your gold. Now we're going to take the gold knife, and the silk also is used to wipe off any grease that might be on it. One thing you don't want to do is have any grease on your fingers or on your work or on the knife, because if grease gets on these, the gold sticks to that. However, if grease gets onto the gesso, it's not going to let the gold stick to the gesso. So you never want to be touching the gesso. So I'm just going to wipe this off, and you want to be careful doing it. While the knife isn't like a kitchen knife in terms of sharpness, if you go like this, you will cut your hand. So what I do is I cut it into usually like 9 or 12 squares. I'm going to cut it into probably about 9. So let's see what we do there. And what you want to do is place the knife down like this, and then just gently go through like that and bring it through. like that. If you have grease on the knife, the grease is going to pull the gold and it's going to rip and tear. Then I'm going to come over and I'm going to cut it this way, like that. So there's my 12 pieces of gold. So I set the knife down. I'm going to take the silk and I'm going to wrap it around my finger like this. You want to have a nice, as smooth as you can get it, like this. Then with your left hand, now if you're left-handed, you'll probably be doing this opposite. But I'm going to take and pick the gold up with my small finger, and in a motion, I almost let it sort of fly through the air and let it land down onto the gold. And that allows the gold to lay flat onto the gesso. So I wanted to kind of show you and explain this to you because you're going to breathe onto the gesso. So you only have a few minutes to lift the gold and to get the gold to fly over and to lay down. So you're doing this gold on the edge of your finger, and the motion is sort of like Superman. It's coming over like this. It's coming across in a loop to lay it down. If you're picking it up and you're just trying to do that, it's going to crumble down and you're not going to get a nice flat layer. With gesso gilding, you really need like 2 layers of gold for the craftsmanship. So I'm going to get a little bit of grease on the side of my finger like that, and that's what's going to allow the gold to stick to it. Now you want to also decide what's going to be the best place to lay the gold and what angle to hold your artwork. So I'm going to have it like this. I'm going to pick this gold up, and it's just hanging off the edge of my finger like that. And I'm going to breathe onto the gesso, and what you want is to have the warm breath coming up from the diaphragm. You don't want to just be blowing on it because that's not going to bring the moisture in. But the sugar that we talked about last night as we ground this is hygroscopic, and that's what's going to draw your breath in. So then I come over and I just press straight down and straight up like that. And I'm going to come get another piece. And I'm going to bring that down, straight down and up like that. So I don't press too much. Now what I'm going to do is take the glassine paper and lay this on top. And I go around the edges, and I'm going to seal it. And that's so that the gold adheres to all those little edges. So again, when you are designing your piece and you're thinking of all kinds of neat things to do, you got to remember how you're going to be gilding it, how you're going to be laying the gold onto these little edges, and how many little edges you're going to have to do. And then I'm going to take this and brush that away, like that. Now when I burnish the gold, at this point, all we're doing is we're gilding it to get the gold to stick and to seal the edges. It's going to sit overnight, and then it's going to harden, and then we'll come back tomorrow, and then we're going to burnish it up to a bright shine. But I'm going to put the second layer on in a second. What I do sometimes, I'll lay the glassine over it, and that's sort of a great revealer because it will show if there's any places that gold didn't stick or you missed. So I see just one little place that needs covering, but again, you need at least 2 layers of gold with the gesso. So you always want to get situated when you're ready to go. Wrap the silk, grab the piece of gold on the edge of your finger. If it sticks to another piece, you can use the silk cloth to hold that down. Then you have that. And then I'd breathe again a little bit. Place that straight down and up. And I'm just gently pressing it. You don't want to press it too hard because you don't want the impression of the silk or your fingerprints in there. And they can track you down. And this comes over like that. Now, if you're gilding and for some reason the gold isn't sticking, if you start getting into like more than 3 or 4 layers of gold, then something's wrong and you need to stop and analyze why it may not be sticking. So you want to come back right away, and I'm using the outer edge of the burnisher to come up against these edges of the gold to seal those right away. Because these edges along the side are probably the ones that capture the least amount of the moisture from your breath. Then when I burnish it on the top, I'm just doing a light circular motion, and I'm not giving it a lot of pressure. I'm just enough to make it adhere. If you press too hard or if you start tilting the burnisher, you're going to create a line in your gesso. So there's 2 layers of gold, and it has a nice patina to it now, but tomorrow it's going to come up like a mirror. So that's the process. You can put probably a 3rd layer on if you want. If you're doing gesso gilding where you've got raised surfaces and little textures to it, you have to make sure that you burnish all those little edges so that they stick. Okay? So that's Gilding 101 with gesso.